Hello, my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Dustina. This is Spiritually Boujee Astrology, and we're going to take a look at the astrological transits of February 2026, the major transits of this month. I can't believe we went through January so quickly, but I don't want to get stuck on that because anything from January is pushing us into some of the new solidifying vibration that we will be putting together in February. And before I actually get into all the transits, I got a couple little things I want to talk about with you guys. One, monthly special. Now, you've listened to me for a long time. Y'all know that at Gemini season, I do BOGO specials. And I specifically do that as a way to celebrate my birthday because I am a Gemini, for those that don't know. So I do buy one, get one readings. However, I have a mission. I have something that I want to start. And most specifically, I am working towards starting a nonprofit in the month of February. And this nonprofit is going to be something that is not astrological. However, it is something that is meant to help, aid, and protect the entire spiritual community. And what I'm putting together right now is very much my project. It's very much my baby. I went into the community doing a lot of different things in 2025. A lot of you guys know that. My intuition told me to go see, experience, and do certain things. And now I understand why and what needs to be done next. I can't tell you guys everything yet. I will, I promise. However, in the meantime, I am running my normal BOGO birthday special during the month of February. So, what does that mean? You go to the website, www.thespirituallyboujee.com. You go to astrological services. We got a couple different consultation office, and you'll see there is a BOGO reading through February of 2026. My 90-minute sessions are now going to be available for booking. 2 90-minute sessions for the price of one. And everyone that books one of these BOGO specials, you will be directly contributing to the costs that I need to incur to start this nonprofit. Now, I know not all of you are going to want to book a reading, and so you're going to want to help. I'm not ready to talk about this publicly, although I have kind of talked about it just a little bit with some people. If you are not wanting to book the readings, the other thing that you can do is go to buymeacoffee.com and look for Spiritually Boujee. This link is in the description of every single episode. I specifically had people back at the beginning of this podcast request for me to put this in here because it's a tip service kind of thing. Like you can literally just send me a cup of coffee. You can do one for $5, $10, $20. It doesn't really matter. But your girl is working on something. And given what I have seen and the need that I have seen, whatever you are picturing right now, I'm telling you it's bigger. There is something that I am working on with a group of friends that is meant to aid and help the entire spiritual community once I get it going. And again, the special that I'm running through the month of February is directly towards the startup cost for filing my 503c and everything else to get websites launched and everything else. Now, if you would like to donate some other type of way, whether you have services or something like that, you can email me. It is Dustina at thespirituallyboujee.com. But aside from that, the biggest thing that you can do to support me and what I'm doing and this big brainchild that's coming out is to either go to the Buy Me a Coffee or book the BOGO specials through the month of February. Okay. I'm going to leave that alone now. February truly feels like two different vibrations. The first 2 weeks feel one way. The second 2 weeks feel like a complete other vibration. They correspond to one another. They're meant to help one another. But whenever it comes to how fast this month is going to go by, it's going to fly by, but in the initial vibration, it's not. And I want to focus now first on the first half of the month. We have all these transits that are going to be going through Aquarius. Now, we do start the very first day of the month, February 1st. We're going to be starting in a full moon. But aside from that, we're kind of just in this airy, communicative, logical, must learn, must troubleshoot, putting certain information into order, putting certain plans into order, putting certain dynamics into play, negotiated, strategized. It's a lot of information. And it doesn't quite feel like movement, yet all of it is movement until we get to the second half of the month. And in the second half of the month, we got a couple different things that are going to happen simultaneously. One, Saturn is going to go into Aries. And once Saturn enters Aries this time, we are no longer dealing with pinky toe dips. It is a cannonball plunge into the fiery pits of Aries. What did I was going to say Aries. Wow. Harry? No. Sorry. Into Aries. It's moving into there. Now, there's dynamics that go with this, especially whenever it comes to the collective. Saturn is said to be in its fall in Aries. So what that means is he doesn't function well. And whenever it comes to people in positions of power and certain levels of roles and responsibilities, some people are going to do well with their roles if they have the passion and the drive to do things. However, if we see people put into positions of power or not doing well in their positions of power, they're going to get tested over the next 2 years just because of Saturn in Aries. And the reason I'm saying 2 years is because once we plunge in, that is where Saturn is going to be until the spring of 2028. Babies, that is 2 years. There's a test coming in 2027, late 26 going into 27. And a lot of what we're dealing with right at this very beginning moment of Saturn and Aries is going to have a direct impact to that later. So can't tell you what the test is quite. Wait, astrologically, I can tell you what the test is, but really putting all the dots together and getting a framework of what that test is, we still need to see the human effect of how a lot of the next few months are going to play out, just to be real. Okay. Saturn is going to go into Aries. Immediately after Saturn goes into Aries, we start eclipse season. Now, the thing about this eclipse season is we're going to have one eclipse in Aquarius, but the nodes are still in Virgo and Pisces. Whenever it comes to the Pisces side of the eclipse axis, we have not been getting new moons. We've only been getting full moons, and we will not get our full moon in Pisces until August. So what we get is what's called an out of sign eclipse. An out of sign eclipse is where we're going to have an eclipse either before the node or after the node changes signs. In this case, it's before the node changes signs. It's a new moon. New moons are usually tied to new beginnings, certain things falling into place, certain things arriving, certain things coming into light. This new moon is going to be squaring Uranus. It's going to have some excitement tied to it. It's going to have some shock tied to it. It's going to have ripples effects of additional things that didn't necessarily feel like they're going to plan, yet in some way they are going to plan. It's kind of interesting. But the thing is, the node has not changed signs, and it won't change signs until July. So when we have an eclipse in a sign before the node changes signs, this is like a precursor event where we start realizing and putting some things together, knowing that they're going to be bigger later on. Now, upon that eclipse, we are also going to have our Saturn-Neptune conjunction. They have been close to each other, hip to hip with one another, bringing a lot of things into the forefront, but haven't fully notched a lot of things in. And whenever we finally have this conjunction, this one and only conjunction, it is going to happen at 0 degrees of Aries. 0 degrees is where the zodiac signs start. If you look at which is the first zodiac sign, regardless if we take off your ideas from your rising sign, go with the actual zodiac, Aries is the first zodiac sign. And so much of the energy that was going through the month of January was happening in Capricorn. It was happening in Saturn's sign before Saturn plunges into its new arena and makes some type of new long-term commitment via its conjunction to Neptune. Is with the Saturn Neptune conjunction, I'm kind of in torn places with it. And I have done the history research backwards of things that I found in the past. And when I first found them a little bit over a year ago, they didn't make sense, and now they do. And I'm saying that for the collective and not so much as an individual. And whenever I finally get the chance to do the Saturn Neptune thing, every time I sit down to do the Saturn Neptune like meditative rant video, something goes wrong. Something pops up, something happens. So I'm gonna put a little bit of that into this right here as to what I kind of have picked up on. One, there's something about a reset. There's something about a reset in our vibration, in the way that we're doing things. I'm not saying good, bad, or ugly. There's something about a reset. There's a very common thing, regardless of the industry, regardless of the community, that whenever a lot of conversations round out, a lot of people say, it's like we just need to start over. Okay. And I see that. I feel that. I understand that. And I do foresee that for a lot of people, it's a hard reset that's coming through this eclipse season and through the Saturn Neptune conjunction. But I don't think it's reset for everybody. I think for a lot of people, there's going to be like a great manifestation, something that comes together in the Saturn Neptune conjunction, that it is a part of our dreams, it is a part of our desire, it is a part of our ambition, it is a part of our focus, it is the fueled aspect in us to achieve something, to do something, to go somewhere, based off of the fact that, again, this is going to be Saturn and Neptune in Aries. And in another way, because y'all know how I feel about Neptune, if it's not going to be something spiritual and it's not going to be something positive, then we go with the lies, the fraud, the deception. And for some people, I do feel like the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is going to have this vibration towards like a great delusion. But I also feel like there's something very much about controlling narratives and beliefs. And if you're paying attention in the collective, this makes a lot of sense. Now, there are historical reasons that correspond and support that. I will get to this Saturn Neptune. I don't know why things keep popping up. It just keeps telling me that the universe is like, you can't do it yet, which tends to happen because then when I do finally get to sit down, it's because I need to shoot something else because it's timely, i.e., hey, look, it's going to be February. So there's that. Oh, the second half of the month feels very, very different. The eclipse, as I said, Saturn's full entry into Aries, but then also the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. But that's not all. No, babies, that's not all. And whatever comes through with this energy of Saturn's entry into Aries, the new moon in Aquarius that is happening before the nodes change signs, that says, hey, I want to do something, but I'm not ready to do it. So I'm going to make a commitment in this moment to change. Please note how I said that because we're going to come right back to it. And the Saturn Neptune also speaks to something new, something starting, something beginning. But again, with the eclipse, we want to commit to something that we're not fully prepared for. It takes time for preparation. And for many of us, whatever comes through in that middle part of February based off of Saturn's entry, Saturn's conjunction to Neptune, or the eclipse in a Saturn ruled sign, because that's the other thing. Aquarius is also ruled by Saturn. It has two rulers, Saturn and Uranus, but that eclipse is also squaring Uranus. So still has layers to speak to this. By the end of the month, Mercury is going to go retrograde. Yes, that's right. The thing about this Mercury retrograde is it's so tightly following those commitments, that new energy, this desire to set a new long-term stage, a new long-term standard that we're not ready for. And this makes me think we can't make a commitment that requires two levels of change, two vibrations, two settings of timelines. Sorry, I had a hiccup just then. Two vibrations of timelines. Now, the first would be immediately after the eclipse, Mercury is going to go retrograde. When we go through the eclipse, Mercury will be in shadow. So that means we're already becoming aware of stuff that we want to commit to that requires some type of purge, release, reprieve, revision, rethinking, revising, restructuring of some sort, everything that goes to a Mercury retrograde. That change is very, very necessary for the immediate. Now, the thing is, in the middle of that Mercury retrograde, which we're not fully focused on yet, we just get a glimpse of it at the end of February. The other side of the eclipse axis will be the full moon in Virgo, the full moon in Mercury sign. So for a lot of people, once Mercury goes into Pisces, especially once Mercury goes into shadow, there will be the awareness of certain feelings being scraped and brought to the surface, making us rethink some things. And for a lot of people, it will be tied to the commitments of the new, tied to the eclipse and the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. But I said it impacts two timelines. See, we won't have another eclipse in Aquarius until the spring of 2027. And that spring part of 2027 is the test energy that I'm referring to whenever I'm talking about Saturn being in its fall and in a plunge in Aries. That particular transit is going to be a Mars retrograde. That particular transit is tied to events that have already occurred, specifically through January. That particular timeline, even though it's being cemented even more in February, directly also impacts April. It's going to impact July. It's going to impact October, November. And then we get a nice big Mars retrograde test in the start of 2027. We are starting big things, fast-moving things. We have a big idea that requires ambition. Many of us had this new thing come to the forefront. Some a little bit around December, most specifically around that Christmas time. Some of us got a glimpse of something right then, but not all of us. More of us, the new came through in January. Some of that new was shocking. Some of that new was startling. Some of that new is what's enforcing the strategic vibration that will be the first part of February. Because the first part, it does feel a little slow, but it also feels noisy. It feels stagnant for some people. It feels like we're handling a bunch of details, but the details are going somewhere. Most specifically, into things that must start, committed to, come into light in the last part of February. And there's a lot going on in the atmosphere. And the more you can connect to the new things, the better you can be, the better in alignment you can be. And if you feel like so much change is happening very, very quickly, you're right. You're right. But that's what this year is meant to be. Fast moving, lots of changes, lots of new ideas, lots of new desires, lots of new beliefs, not lots of new ambitions whenever it comes to the month of February. But we're feeding off of January. And by the end of the month, we're going to be making some immediate necessary changes, regardless of how other people are going to feel, because we want something to work for the long term, and we're willing to make the decisions to make something happen. And not everybody's going to be fine with that. Now, the one thing I will bring up about that Mercury retrograde is I want to go back to the last one. Back in that November time frame, whenever Mercury went retrograde between Sagittarius and Scorpio, right when Mercury went into shadow in October, I started to say then, for many of you, there's a do the opposite. Some of you figured out what your opposite was. Some of you had no clue. You don't know if you did it right. You don't know if you did it wrong. You didn't even try. You just kept doing your own thing. Parts of the energy around the upcoming Mercury retrograde, which we will focus on more in March, but again, it starts in February. It will tie back to the last Mercury retrograde. It will also tie into the next one. These three are connected thanks to Jupiter. I am blaming Jupiter. And I'm also blaming the last Mars retrograde. But that's a different conversation. We're not ready for. We're not needing to unhash that right now. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of conversations. There's a lot of strategy. There's a lot going on. And it is very, very noisy for a lot of people. There's a lot of planning for a lot of people. There's a lot of negotiations for a lot of people. There's a lot of new ideas that were not previously considered. They were not previously on our radar. But once they showed up, it's like they captured all of our attention. It captured so much more than you were willing to realize that you could give. But that direction, the longer you think about it, the more you think about it, you're drawn to it, almost magnetically drawn to it. And if you're not, then you're not going in the right direction. But if you've recently had those epiphanies, the clarity of this is what we need to do different. This is how we change. This is how we connect to something differently. This is how we commit to something differently. You are being pulled for a reason. And for so many of us, we have to make logical decisions this month to make changes in this new direction. Because again, 2026 is us getting accustomed to a new normal. And not everybody is being drugged, kicking and screaming. I don't want to drag you. I want you to make the choices to understand and go into different things on your own. It doesn't mean what we had before was wrong. I'm just a firm believer that things that happen in our life are for a reason or a season. And for a lot of us, 2025 was the end of seasons on a lot of things in our life, but we were making space for new things going into this new normal. Okay, let's get into the transits. Let's get into the month. It's the shortest month of the year, guys. Start with that part. It's the shortest month. So there's that. All right, I am starting this on February 1st. The way we start the month is the full moon in Leo. You can see that right here. Now, this is actually more exact at 4:09 p.m., but I got it at 4:30. It's close enough for government work. It's fine. You can see the full moon. This is a peak in energy in a lot of ways. This full moon is inspirational. There's levels of confidence. There can be triggers of insecurity. It really comes down to what you're seeing from the other side. The reason I say that in particular is because every full moon is the moon opposite the sun. Like, that's a full moon. However, this is a full moon in Leo, and it's the last lunation before we go into eclipse season. But it's also the last lunation in Leo that's not going to be an eclipse for a while. Because the next time we have a lunation, the new moon in Leo that we'll have later this year, that will be eclipse season. So this is our last lunation before we really kick into commitments and change and putting some things together and big new announcements and big new vibrations. And for some of us, we need to have a test in the full moon. For others, it is accepting the level up. For some people, there are boosts in confidence. For some people, there is seeing this reflection of how other people are coming together. And that's what I was really noticing with this full moon. And I really picked up on like people following a certain light, a certain vibration, coming around something. And I'm looking at the fact that this is a full moon in the sun sign. But where is the sun? Smack dab in the middle between Pluto, Mars, Venus, and Mercury. The other thing is this is the full moon in the sun sign. And again, over the course of January, multiple planets went into conjunctions with the sun. They went through rebirths. However, the sun was involved every time. Now, this is going to be very insightful for many Leo risings, but there is a reason for the light. And I feel like when we get to this full moon in Leo, it is going to, again, trigger or level up the light and what has recently been shown to it, what was discovered, what has been talked about, what has been communicated, what has been found, what have we been willing to fight about, what have we been willing to face, what fears have we overcome, what transformations have we seen. All of those things, Venus's conjunction to the sun, Mars's conjunction, Mercury's conjunction, Pluto's conjunction, each one of those have had an impact to our confidence. Leo is a representation of that level of strength, confidence. And for many people, we're going to see a turn in people's confidence that, again, attracts connection. It attracts people. It attracts the society. It's Aquarius. It's attracting so much in the collective. A new light is meant to be seen. And some people are going to follow the light, moths to flame. Other people are going to see other people having the light shown on them, and they're going to feel like something has been removed from them. Because so much of this vibration right now is not leaning towards ego. It's leaning towards what's right for everyone. And if you are focused on what's fair for everyone, there's a much better response in following versus those that have narcissistic or egotistical behaviors. Not projecting, just a very key term that I'm picking up on. Not all Leo placements are egotistical. I want to be clear about that too. I have plenty of Leo friends that are not egotistical and they're not narcissistic. It's not that. There's a shift within the confidence level. And when some people see so much confidence on another person, it's going to trigger wounds, fears, or insecurities in them. And that's the other thing that I see with this full moon. Okay. Bumping this to the next day on February 2nd, Mercury is going to go through its sextile to Chiron. This is going to be in the evening time, roughly around 6:30 p.m. We're still pretty close at 4:30, so I'm not going to move this by hour. This is not heavy energy. We are still in full moon energy. And I think it's interesting that as Mercury is hitting this sextile to Chiron, Uranus is wrapping up its retrograde. This is a stationing Uranus and it's about to go direct. But Uranus has this square to the moon. And I feel like in some ways, Mercury, we communicate how we fix something. We communicate an idea. We communicate a solution. But with Uranus hitting the square to the moon and the fact that Uranus is hosting all of that stuff in Aquarius, because again, Uranus is the modern ruler where Saturn is the traditional ruler. It feels like what has recently come through is also giving an unexpected shift that is going to be a big part of the plan, the working, the dialogue as we progress through the week. But Mercury is more in this element of communication, it's talks, it's plan. Yes, we can talk about the wounds, more so focused on solutions, but there's something very much being communicated in regards to where we're either putting the fix to something or we are talking to someone about how something has recently hurt them. But I'm not really picking up on the recent hurt the way most would think. I feel like there's too much forward momentum to be stuck in a pattern of hurt. I'm not saying that it can't be there, but so much of this energy is more focused on movement that I don't think that's going to be the bigger case. Okay. Bumping this now to the 3rd, over the course of the evening on February 3rd, Uranus is going to end its retrograde. So I got this now at 7:30. Here's Uranus, 27 degrees, 27 minutes. That's where he's been for the last 36 hours or so. Bump it one more, 2 more. There we go, 2 more. And Uranus turns direct. Now, Uranus is still hosting all of this stuff in Aquarius. Some of the recent changes, some of the recent plans, some of the recent ideas, they need to be further than negotiated. They need to be typed out. They need to be documented. They need to have tangibility to them. And one thing that I'm looking at is with the moon going through Virgo this day, there is something tangible in the communication, in the filings in some way, like there's something more tangible to what is going on. And for some people, there is going to be things that are kind of coming through unexpectedly, because after Uranus ends its retrograde, we got a couple things that go on pretty quickly. On the 4th, so now I'm just going to bump this by day, Venus will go through her sextile to Chiron. This is following Mercury, but what is Mercury doing? Mercury is starting its square to Uranus. Now, Venus's sextile to Chiron, this is going to be more focused on, like, again, things that bring us pleasure in the Venusian sense. This can be something tied to food. This can be something tied to the appearance of something. This can be something tied to, like, an item that gives us pleasure, but the idea that it's got a solution. So I'm thinking of, like, you have this pretty dress, but something happens to the seam and we need to fix it to make it beautiful again. I'm thinking something more along these lines whenever it comes to Venus sextile to Chiron, that we're trying to find a solution, but it's based off of the appearance of certain things. Flavor to something. You have to give a different ingredient to the food, but it's like this little solution makes it better than what we could have anticipated. This got a flavor I wasn't expecting. That smells terrific. The aroma of something. There's something very much about a benefit here, but there's either a pleasure to it or a taste to it or an appearance level to it. And this might not be tied to Mercury square to Uranus, but this Venusian energy feels more like an appearance vibration than it does anything else. Now, as we get into not the 20th, I'm so sorry, February 5th, I just looked at the 2 and thought 20 for just then. Mercury is going to go through its square to Uranus. Now, this is more exact, roughly around 6:15 in the morning, got it now at 6:30. Here's Mercury, 27 degrees, 28 minutes. Here is Uranus, 27, but this is a newly direct Uranus. There is something meant to be communicated, something meant to be addressed, some kind of plan of action. In some ways, people will be confused when this happens. In some way, they will not be expecting it. It will be bewildering in other ways, but there's something that's meant to come through that's very unexpected, but it also feels like one half of the equation has also flipped in some unexpected way because Uranus just ended a retrograde. Now, for some people, This is going to feel like a push of being able to move something forward, although we're not moving anything forward quite yet. Uranus is going to be at 27 degrees for a while, but there can be certain things that it's just like the news flips a way of thinking that will lead to progression later. But again, we're not fully ready for progression because we're still having all of this air vibration. And on this day, the moon goes from Virgo to Libra. So we still got the moon in an air situation, that we still have a lot of noise and things that need to be talked through in a lot of ways. Right, Mercury goes through its square to Uranus. This is going to be the most exact on the 5th. On the 6th, but later on the 6th, Mercury is going to enter Pisces. Now, I want to be real clear about this for a lot of people. Mercury's arrival into Pisces, we really need to pay attention to what's coming through between now and the 11th. That's 5 days. Over the course of these 5 days, we get an idea of where we're going to have to shift our focus for change. We're getting an idea, but not necessarily enacting change. We're not seeing the things that go wrong. We're not having things go to misplan. Like, we don't have all of it yet, but there's a specific reason why I'm saying with Mercury going into Pisces, we need to pay attention to these first 5 days, because this feels like the foreshadowing of an arrival, the news of an arrival, maybe not a full arrival for certain people. And there can be certain emotional triggers to it because Mercury is now in Pisces. But once Mercury goes into Pisces, this is where he's going to be until April 14th. That's over 2 months of Mercury in its detriment of Pisces. The wateriness, the inability to think some things through, or the jumps to like different dream perspectives as to like, oh, okay, we're going to get this filed. We're going to get all the paperwork filed. But everybody else is like, but we can make this and we can sell this and we can build this and we can. And if this is not handled right, you can't do any of this. But nobody wants to focus on what needs to get handled right. So whatever needs to be handled right, I really hope you get it done before Mercury goes into Pisces. Because once Mercury goes into Pisces, the ability to focus on certain things is going to dwindle quite a bit. And we will have misunderstandings. But I do feel like as soon as Mercury goes into Pisces, it is immediately telling us where some of our focus needs to be for the upcoming changes based off of just the Mercury and Pisces side. Everything else is still in play. This is giving us something else. And it is also giving us an idea of where there's going to be a pivotal turn in the second eclipse that will be on March 3rd. These few days, these first few days of Mercury in Pisces before he enters shadow, and that's why I'm only saying the 5 days, because after day 5, he's in shadow. They're very, very important, but they're new important, not old important. That doesn't mean old can't come through. That's more likely to happen during the Mercury retrograde. But there is an importance to these days, and I cannot stress that enough. And there's more reasons why, because there's more stuff going on. But hey, Mercury is now in Pisces. And again, where he will be for the next 2 months. It's like 2 months and a week. All right, Mercury is now in Pisces. Now on the 8th, we get 2 energies back to back. One you can see directly, the other you cannot. First one, Venus is going to go through her square to Uranus. Now, I have talked about Venus being in Aquarius a couple of times throughout the weekly episodes, and I keep reminding everybody, this will be the last time these 2 planets are in mutual reception. Once Uranus leaves Taurus, and this is going to happen in April, we will not have another timeline of Venus and Uranus being in mutual reception until Uranus makes his way over to Libra, and that's a good 30, 40 plus years down the road. We got time before that happens. So there's some very key vibrations about these squares to Uranus that are also giving foreshadowing to what we commit to in the eclipse, because the eclipse will also square Uranus. So be aware of that part of the vibration. But this isn't the only thing going on. The other thing going on is what's called a contra-ANTISCIA. Now, a contra-ANTISCIA is not easily seen. It's a mathematical type of vibration. It's a mathematical conjunction or opposition. You have to know how the signs work to make this happen. But what we get is a contra-ANTISCIA between Saturn and Neptune. So basically, stop share. Here's a sticky note. If I was to fold the chart and lay Aries on top of Pisces, I'm going to do it this way. Those two planets would come into what's known as a secret conjunction or a contra-ANTISCIA. And this is happening during the Venus-Uranus square. Very quickly afterwards, we finally get our Saturn-Neptune conjunction, but this date has foreshadowing. Just as much as what you need to be paying attention to what's going on based off of Mercury's entry into Pisces, we also need to pay attention during this contra-ANTISCIA, because a contra-ANTISCIA is like a backside handshake, backdoor handshake. It's done kind of behind the scenes. It's one of those things, you looking at your cousin at Thanksgiving and you're doing that one side eye that tells them that you want to go outside for a little walkie smoky kind of thing. But nobody says a word. It's all through the eyes. It's all unspoken. It's not being broadcasted. We aren't standing and shouting from the rooftops, I would like to go outside with my favorite cousin. We're not doing that. It's an understanding. It's a commitment. It's a connection that is not privy to everyone and everything. Many of you are going to have moments in the Venus-Uranus square that you also have something else that gets connected that isn't easily seen. It isn't easily measurable. It might even be a secret, an unexpected secret, but the unexpected secret has a benefit. But it still foreshadows the larger part of the commitment once Saturn goes into Aries and finally hits the conjunction to Neptune. And we're days away. So if you are one of those people that every time you hear about Saturn and Neptune, you're super freaked out over it, we have foreshadowing well before it's ever made. We're already in the level of foreshadowing because a bunch of the stuff that happened through January is also directly impacting that too. So what I'm saying is, if you've had good things happen until this point, it stands to reason you're getting pivotal disruption here in the coming weeks. If you've had rage, frustration, and fighting, there might be chaotic disruption in the near weeks. It really comes down to what has been changing. What has everyone's reaction been up until these points? Because the stuff that's coming through, it's not just going to just magically appear one day, unless it's been based off of very, very shady, fraudulent-like things. But even with Saturn, Neptune, there can be judgments about fraudulent-like things. So we'll see. I'm going to keep it going. We get this contra-ANTISCIA. Basically, again, if I was to fold the chart right here, where the line of Aries and Pisces is, Saturn and Neptune would lay right on top of each other and mathematically come to 30 degrees. They're actually at 29:59 right here, but they are in what's called a contra-ANTISCIA or a secret conjunction. They're working with one another. It is fueling an inspiration, a manifestation, a desire, an ambition, a drive. It's committing to it and fueling to it. And there's a lot of excitement in this part of the vibration. But even with the moon being in Scorpio, that still speaks to some elements kind of being in the backside, kind of being under wraps, kind of being a secret, until the timing is right. And for a lot of people, the timing is going to be more so the latter half of the month. Okay. On the 10th, Venus is going to go into Aries. And the thing about not Aries, sorry, Venus is going to go into Pisces. Wrong one. I skipped a month. Now, the thing about Venus being in Pisces is Venus is said to be in her exaltation in Pisces. She's super happy here. She likes the feeling, she likes the emotion, she likes everything, and it's very romanticism like for her. Oh, it's just oozy and goozy, and I love the way this feels. And Venus loves Pisces. But I want to add a layer to that. Venus is being hosted by a new Neptune and Aries. So they're still new in the vibration. It's also being hosted by Jupiter, because Pisces has two rulers, traditional and modern. The traditional one is Jupiter. Well, Jupiter is also in its exaltation. Jupiter is exuded, happy, lush, comfortable in Cancer. Venus going into Pisces, doubling up levels of that exaltation, but adding extra emphasis to the new. There is going to be commitments that are so well supported to the astrology that the frame of thinking for a lot of people is, what could possibly go wrong? Well, the human effect is we don't know what we don't know. Things can go wrong later on. But in this moment, from here on out for the rest of the month, while Venus is in Pisces, we don't really feel like something could go wrong. There's a romanticism. There's that Pisces quality of, no, everything is just going to be fine. It can be, but it won't always be. And that's me just putting the realism out there. But in the moment, if we're feeling exudy, happy, loving the vibration, loving the flow of things, and loving the emotions, for some people, it's almost going to be intoxicating. And I don't say that kind of stuff very often either. That's what part of it feels like once Venus goes into Pisces. And with Mercury being here too, and Mercury about to enter shadow, some of the arrivals once Venus is here can also be tests. Now, as we get closer, I will define that better. Right now, we need to let a couple more things play out before I start defining that Mercury retrograde any more than what I have. Okay. On the 11th, the very next day, Mercury does enter shadow. But this still feels like it's a part of that new. It still feels like it's a part of that taste, some of that other vibration. Some things kind of feeling romantic like, or I want to say romanticism. It's like, I want to be captured in the entirety of the universe. This is, I think, some of y'all watch Bridgerton, so I'll use Bridgerton as an example. There's some people that whenever they get into this show, like they really get into it. They want to drink tea and they want to have these beautiful dresses and they want to be in this world. They want it to be submersive. That's what I mean by that level of like romanticism. Like there's a submersiveness to it. And there will be like this romanticized vibration of like, no, it's all going to be fine. It's all going to be sunshine and rainbows. And for some people, that idea of sunshine and rainbows will also lead into parts of the test, because Mercury is going into shadow right when all this starts, letting us know by the end of it, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. So do with that part what you will. Okay. On the 11th, again, Mercury enters shadow. That is going to be exactly 8 degrees and 29 minutes. This is 8 degrees 34. It's fine. It's close enough. As we get into the later parts of the 11th, we get additional things going on. The sun is going to hit its exact sextile to Chiron. You can kind of see that right here. It's closer to that 8 o'clock time frame, it looks like. But here's the sun, 23 degrees, 19 minutes. Here's Chiron, 23:20. There is still something about the wound. There is still something about the solution. But what's interesting about this one right here is if I go ahead and just kind of bump this a little bit more by hour, even the moon gets involved in this. But I also want to bring up as we bridge from the 11th to the 12th. So this, for a lot of people, this is a continuation of a certain vibration. Mercury is going to hit its first conjunction to the North Node. This is the head of the dragon. I will have, I will consume, I desire, I will control. This is what I want. Gimme, gimme, gimme. I'm a greedy baby. This is what I want. This is what I'm meant to have. And again, submersive elements too, but there can be passionate elements in this too, because the moon will also jump into this and hit the sextile to the sun and the trine to Chiron as the 11th progresses into the 12th. And there will be extra layers around beliefs, extra layers around the solutions, extra layers around understanding how we overcome the wounds, talking about things that have bothered us in the past and finally letting them go. And there is a, for lack of a better way, there is a stewing towards finally getting over certain wounds that are starting to kind of manifest into the vibration. People will kind of manifest into the vibration, but we're not clear with all the lessons yet. And I want to be very, very clear about that. But there are lessons coming, even with all the new, because again, we have to clear our unfinished business. Okay, Mercury hits that conjunction to the North Node. You can see that roughly here around midnight. This is the first of three. So some of the vibration around this Mercury North Node conjunction can also come back around in March, most specifically between the 16th and the 24th. The most heightened exact, the 17th and the 23rd. But I put a human effect of adding like that entire few days. I think it's 8 days altogether. They're all very connected and they can feed back to this moment right here. And we might have an idea, again, an idea of a solution that we feel very driven and drawn towards, magnetically drawn towards, but we might not be completely right. So be aware of that. Okay. After Mercury hits this conjunction to the North Node, we get past the sun sextile to Chiron and all this. We get into the 13th. So I'm just going to bump this a day and then start going by hour. And this is where Saturn is going to go into Aries. Where's it at? We're getting closer. There we go. Got it here at 6:30 p.m. Saturn goes into Aries. What's also interesting right after Saturn goes into Aries is the North Node. Well, the node period is not just North Node. We're focused on North Node because we've had a conjunction to the North Node, and even Venus is about to go into a conjunction to the North Node. But the node is about to hit the 8-degree mark, and that's where it's going to be all through eclipse season. I'm just bumping it by hour a couple times. So this tells me, again, whatever starts to come through once Saturn goes into Aries, there we go. We're going into the 14th now. Now the nodes are at 8 degrees. This is setting a topic that we're going to be building, negotiating, working through, having layers of revisions to for months, because that's how long the North Node and the South Node will be at the 8-degree mark. So whenever we get planets, or in this case, the luminaries, that get stuck in one area of the sky for a while, then they can set the stage of like all of the vibration is one series and sets of topics, all of it. And as we progress deeper into February, that's going to make sense. And as we go through March, that's also going to make sense. But we still have the new that we're trying to do while dealing with whatever old is finding its way back around in some elements of like tests or revisions or things along those lines. We're getting the little pop-ups, but not reacting to them in the change way yet. It's just the things are finding their way to manifest. The universe keeps sending little messages of so-and-so is about to call you. No, they're not. They're blocked. That doesn't mean they don't find a way. That doesn't mean the universe doesn't put you back in front of somebody. because it will, just so we can finally get rid of some lingering vibrations that are quite old. And again, this will be more so as we get into the last few days of February and into March. But these little manifestations and pop ups are starting to come through already. Oh, Lord, it's a lot. It's a lot. Okay. So sorry, guys. All right. On the 13th, again, this is whenever Saturn re-enters Aries. Over the course of the next week, Saturn is going to get closer and closer to its conjunction to Neptune. Many of us are feeling a lot of things come together, but there's also like a surreality to this the closer Saturn gets to Neptune. And again, I don't know if I want to call this like the Great Reset. I don't know if this is going to be the Great New Manifestation. I don't know if this is the Great Delusion. I think it's different for everybody, but there is something very much impacting the fullness of the collective as this energy is coming through. And I do feel like we're going to see elements of all of that, and plus one or two things I haven't put into consideration yet. It's not that I haven't thought about certain things, it's just I've thought about so much and I've narrowed it down to these three, but that doesn't mean something else can't come through. Okay. On the 15th, the sun is going to hit its square to Uranus. Now, this is going to be a little bit more exact in the evening time, roughly around the 11:15 p.m. standpoint. Here, but here's the sun, 27 degrees, 4 minutes, hitting this square to Uranus. It's 27:31. This entire day can have a shocking or exciting turn in events. We can have some things that come throughout the day that are just not going to plan. There can be triggers of insecurity, but there can also be something about the new that's taking shape with Saturn Neptune, that it's because of that new we have things that are not going to plan. We have things that feel very, very shocking about how something is going to progress from here, but it's not necessarily in a state of progression. And again, there will be this level of surrealness, going back to like the concepts of Pleasantville and stuff like that, where we're merging timelines, that it's that next click open of the timeline weaving that is also a part of this surreal vibration. And as we get closer to this time frame, that's going to make more sense than what it does right now. But even, hindsight 2020, even when I was saying the Pleasantville stuff back in October, that didn't fully make sense to a lot of people until we got through the rest of the year and into January. And so many of you who started messaging me individually at different times over the last 2 months and are like, I'm in Technicolor. I get it now. Okay. This is one of those I'm in Technicolor kind of time sets that we're paying attention to here. Okay. So the sun hits the square to Uranus. You can see that right here. On the next day, on the 16th, Mercury is going to hit its first trine to Jupiter. And what's interesting is this is the first little hit to Jupiter since Jupiter hit 15 degrees. Jupiter is now slowing down to station. So what I said about the nodes and the fact that they're hitting 8 degrees and they're going to be there until we get through eclipse season, they're really going to be there until April timeframe. Same thing with Jupiter. Jupiter is slowing down. Jupiter is going to turn direct. That's going to be in March. But over the course of the entire rest of February, Jupiter is slowing down. And again, we're going to have a Mercury retrograde in Jupiter's sign that speaks to, again, layers and levels to a revisions around beliefs, revisions around our emotions, scraping things and bringing things up to the surface that we didn't even realize needed to come to the surface. And it's going to be this lingering energy, but this is still where we're in these little communications of with the doctor, the guru, the teacher, of like, I just keep thinking about this one person. There's these little things in the universe that keep saying, this is where I need to go, or this is what I got to focus on, or this is who I got to talk to. And Mercury's trine to Jupiter can literally be getting like guidance on this. And what I'm saying is there's no quick answer well before this time frame actually hits, because there's not. On the 17th, the very next day, we get our new moon eclipse in Aquarius. I'll bump this backwards. Okay. Got it right here at 5:30 in the morning. It's most exact at 6 a.m., but this is close enough. So here's the new moon, 28 degrees of Aquarius. This is an eclipse, but it is an out of sign eclipse, like I said in the intro. This is 10 degrees away from the node. Whenever we have our new moon in Pisces at the end of the month, it's going to be over 20 degrees away from the node. So again, this is an energy that sets the awakening, so to speak, of something we want to do, an awareness of something we want to do, a commitment, because Saturn Neptune is building during this eclipse. So this, all of it kind of speaks to this, a human effect of commitments, of new dreams, desires, drive, fueling, manifestation, or it's discovery of fraud, lies, deception. I don't know which way this is going for some people. But this commitment or this new moon is setting the stage for immediate change, and a change that will take an entire year to manifest, because it will be an entire year before we have another eclipse in Aquarius. Both are true simultaneously. It's not one or the other. Both are true simultaneously. Immediate change and launching something that will take a full year to fully take shape and develop. Okay, new moon in Aquarius. And on this day, Venus is going to hit her conjunction to the North Node. And again, we have that romanticism, surrealism, things that are just encompassing the whole heart of this just feels fated. This just feels right. This is what I want to do. And I'm not dismissing all of that. I'm just saying it's so easy to be in this romanticism of something. And I'm telling you, there will be tests later, no matter how sure-footed you are. There will be tests later. But in this moment, everything is just like this pool of, yes, let's do it. It's good. We're fine. I want this. I'm charged by this. I'm inspired by this. I'm fueled by this, given all the other stuff that's going on simultaneously. Here's our new moon eclipse. And again, this new moon is squaring Uranus. So whatever was happening whenever Mercury and Venus hit the squares to Uranus back during the February 5th and February 8th timeframe, more so the 8th, I think, than the 5th, honestly. There was stuff then that even had foreshadowing to what this new is going to be. And again, this new speaks to rounds of immediate change, as well as long-term change that can take up to a year. Okay. Whew. On the 18th, the sun is going to enter Pisces. That's going to happen a little bit later on the 18th. Just bumping it. There we go. Now in the afternoon, now here's the sun into Pisces. We're now at the start of Pisces season. We are in eclipse season, but it wasn't a Pisces eclipse. It was an Aquarius eclipse. Over the course of the next few days after the 18th, we get our Saturn-Neptune conjunction. That is the most exact on February 20th, roughly between 10:18 and 1:47 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if I bump this backwards by an hour, yeah, here's Saturn, here's Neptune, 0 degrees, 45 minutes. Now, the thing about these two planets, it is not just this day. It's not. This is a triggering, a vibrational awakening that will set the stage and an encompassing of what's going on for the next 2 years. We have had a buildup over the last 2 years towards this energy. And every time we've had timelines of Saturn-Neptune conjunctions, there has been massive things in the collective, especially in regards to people in positions of power. Now, in the mundane effect, not humane, in the mundane effect, there will be some people that are going to see this manifest in their daily life as an authority figure situation or with somebody in a position of power. And that could be a boss, that could be a friend, that could be your husband, that could be your wife, that could be your sister, your brother, that could be somebody that has to like take this crazy type of responsibility or role on. But it's a necessary role for a lot of people. And there's a massive change around responsibilities and roles based off of this vibration. Okay, we're gonna get this going. All of these days are connected. It's not just one thing, and it's still very, very surreal with the Neptune energy. There's this blindness in some ways, this fueling in other ways. It's a capture of the mind. And whatever happened, again, roughly around the 8th, gave foreshadowing to this vibration. I can't stress how important the 8th was for the foreshadowing, but it had a lot of foreshadowing towards this vibration. Okay. After the Saturn Neptune conjunction, we don't have a whole lot much more going on. On the 22nd, Mars will hit its sextile to Chiron, and I actually kind of like this day. Mars is hosting that Chiron, and Mars is wanting to push an action or a reaction, but this isn't a push from a square point of view, it's a sextile. So it's like giving advice on the actions or the reactions. On this particular day, Venus is also going through a trine with Jupiter. You can see that right here. Venus is at 1529, Jupiter's at 1531. And we have this triplicity element towards exaltation. What does that mean? Venus is exalted in Pisces, and that's where she's at. Jupiter's exalted in Cancer. That's where Jupiter's at. But the moon is exalted in Taurus. And these three are in a level of triplicity in the sense of like Jupiter is in the moon sign, the moon is in Venus' sign, and Venus is in Jupiter's sign. So not only are these three planets in triplicity with each other, but they're also all in their exaltations. The action of the Mercury Chiron towards a solution is heavily benefited in the rest of the energy based off of the moon being in Taurus this day. Venus is trying to Jupiter, Venus in her exaltation, while Jupiter is in exaltation. There's a hope in here. There's a benefit in here. But the sad part where I have to be the negative Nancy, it's not negative, it's just realist, is Mercury slowing down for its retrograde. So we also have to be aware of what this benefit is, because this benefit might come with a caveat. We might not see it immediately. And I don't want to be that way. I want to be able to say, this is a beautiful day, buy your lottery tickets. I really like to just say that. But I'm also looking at the fact that Mercury is slowing down and days away from going retrograde, that it also feels like there could be something so good coming through and we want to like grasp it and jump on it. But it's almost like we're not allowed to have it yet because Mercury is about to go retrograde. It's like, oh, this is so great. When do I get to move in? Not for 3 months. And that's just me. Like, it's just like that's how long it's meant to take. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, I have to wait 6 months, 3 months, a year. It's not about the wait. It's just some parts of us is like, yeah, there's this big potential, but at the same time, it's almost like we can't fully have it yet. And Mercury's not going to get out of Pisces again until April 14th. So he's probably not going to be back in this area of the sky until around the April Fool's Day timeframe. So again, it's like we could find out something super beneficial and something that we really, really want and that we really, really like. But then we can also feel like this stuckness that follows, that feels like we can have it, but we can't have it yet. And that's going to be annoying for a lot of people. Okay. On the 26th, bump, 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 Mercury goes retrograde. There you go. Mercury goes retrograde specifically at 12:49 a.m. Central Standard Time. Mercury is retrograde. Yay, yay. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this one. I do feel like it is connected. The reason I specifically feel like it's connected, and again, I will get into a better breakdown of this later when we get closer to the Mercury retrograde. But what I'm looking at is the fact that Mercury Mercury started a retrograde right when Jupiter went retrograde back in November. Like their retrogrades were simultaneous. Well, the end of the Jupiter retrograde is right at the end of this Mercury retrograde. They're connected. But the next Mercury retrograde will also end roughly in this 15-degree mark of Cancer. So it tells me again, based off Jupiter and this element around it, this retrograde is connected to the last one in a lot of ways. This retrograde will also impact the next one in a lot of ways. But this is Mercury retrograde in its detriment in Pisces. Getting to the bottom of the ocean, we don't know how deep and dark everything can go. We don't know how lost people can get in the sauce, but we're going to see elements of people being lost in the sauce. And given that Saturn and Neptune is happening at the same time, this is going to feel very surreal. Parts of the days will feel like everything's in high definition. Parts of the days are not going to make sense in any way, shape, or form. But we're like hopeful. It's the weirdest thing. It is. It's truly the weirdest thing. Oh, but this also comes with disruption. Not just because Mercury is retrograde, because God forbid it just be that. On the 27th, we're going to go through a Mars Uranus square. Now, we have already had Mars Uranus connections. I'm just going to say it that way. Transits through Gemini and Sagittarius. I do not feel like this is tied to those. However, I do, for whatever reason, feel like this this Mars Uranus square can take us back to July of 2024. July of 2024, when the roller coaster vibration that took us in we had a roller coaster vibration that started in July of 24 that rounded us into this up, down, side to side, unfinished business, purging things, tests of things, emotional discrepancy, emotional wounds, going into a reactive Venus retrograde and that was combined with Mercury retrograde that lasted all the way until April. And the way I was explaining it before on the podcast, it was like, it felt like April into May of 2025 was coming off of a waterfall, going from an obstacle course into a waterfall, down, plunge, and coming up for air, trying to figure out where we have just landed because we don't know anything. That was then. But the start of that entire tangent of vibration literally started in July of 2024. And we had major political things going on during the primaries. Without getting too verbaged on this, we've had incredible political things that was happening in July of 2024 when that Mars Uranus conjunction happened. And every time I look at this one right here, I feel like there's something about that July that also feeds into this, that also speaks to this. I don't know why, per se. I've got ideas. But whenever it comes closer to this time frame, I think the human effect will make more sense. And I do feel like this also goes into that Mercury retrograde, the surreal vibration and everything else. And the other thing that's going to happen on the 27th, but it's going to happen later on the 27th, is our third Mercury Venus conjunction. Now, this right here is the third because we had one that happened in the last Mercury retrograde. We had one that happened on January 29th. So right at the start of this month, we had a Venus-Mercury conjunction. And now we get this third and final one. And this feels, again, like a benefit to some necessary change, to some necessary revisions, to what we're trying to commit to and connect to. But for us to really commit and connect to something, we have to make those immediate changes. And that feels like it's the Mercury retrograde. But Venus coming through here, we get some kind of benefit, even though there's been a change of plans. There's been something not go quite the way that we thought. There's been some kind of test with Mercury. And for a lot of people, there is going to be this vibration of like going back and forth with the same people, but for a different reason. Once we get in this latter part of February and going into March, it's like, I got to have the same conversation over and over again. It's like making the sales pitch to the lemonade stand. of over and over again. This is what we're doing, and this is how we're having it. Da, 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 da. And the thing is like it's like the people, but your topic is different. Or the topic is the same, but you're trying to pitch it to different people. If you're trying to pitch it to different people, it might not actually go well because we're doing this in Mercury retrograde, and that's temporary energy. But if we're going through and making revisions to existing things in some way, oh, I don't work there anymore. I don't work at the car lot anymore. I'm over here selling insurance now. I've switched the game. Now I want to talk to you about your car in a different way. And again, we're having the same conversation over and over and over again. I wasn't happy. I wanted to change. I felt inspired. I felt this pull. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And it can bring up some insecurities or emotions from the past as we get into that latter part of February, going into March. So much of January fed into February. A lot of February is directly tied to March. A lot of January was foundational new normals, rutting something into the ground, rooting it in, anchoring it in. So something big can start in April. But before that big can start, between late February and March, we have to make some changes through that wonderful Mercury retrograde. And that's quite literally how we end the month. But those changes have a precursor, something ahead of them that sanctifies why we have to make the changes. And there's a buildup to what that looks like and what that feels like. But it also feels like that change is because it's the right thing for this thing that we want to commit to, this new belief, this new desire, this new fueling, this new ambition, this new direction. We need it in some way. I'm not saying to be afraid of change. Some people struggle with change, and I know that. I like to make fun that it's all fixed signs. Y'all are too stubborn. We're going to drag you kicking and screaming if we have to. But the thing is, that first eclipse isn't a fixed sign. Even the stubborn ones will feel the need for change, will want to commit to change, will feel fueled to move in some kind of belief, in some kind of change. Change is coming. The glimpse of the new normal came last year. There has been foreshadowing to this new dynamic, but you needed to see something one way before, because now that we're going into this new dynamic, you need the knowledge, the tools, and the power of what you recognized from before. But what you're grabbing a hold of and what you're moving with from there is different than what you were shown, because there's a new that needs to happen. There's a new coming through the vibration. There's a lot of new to 2026. And we're just now getting into the second month of all that. So yay. Yay. Okay. I love and appreciate every single one of you. Hit me up with questions, hit me up with concerns. Definitely book the BOGOs. And like I said, those first few that are helping me with the BOGOs, or if you want to do the cup of coffee, whatever you want to do, I would appreciate any help at all. But like I said, I have a goal now to start my nonprofit, and this nonprofit, I say mine because it's my brainchild, but there are other people involved. Very quickly, there were other people involved. But it is something that is meant to help, aid, and protect the entire spiritual community in a way that has not been done up until this point. And I'm super excited whenever I can tell you guys more about it. But like I said, we're in the process. I am in the startup. I am in the strategy time period at this moment. But things are happening. And as soon as more things are put together and filed and approved with the state, I will tell you more. I promise. I love and appreciate every single one of you. I will talk to everybody very, very soon. Subscribe.